Well, to have all understanding of God, you need to have access, of course, to God's mind, which we do. I mean, I'm speaking at the minute. I'm not carefully selecting and searching out every word. It's just pouring in from God's mind through mine into my words onto the phone. And that's what you're doing all the time. You're accessing that part of God's mind that is appropriate in some sense to you, to your values and purpose and situation at present. Now, to grasp or to understand or to be able to think of and imagine the fullness of God, well, only God can contemplate God, can't he? I mean, the immensity, the complexity, I mean. And without, therefore, the only way you can do it is to access God's mind, which is what we do anyway, even in the trivial. I mean, if you put your shoes on, it's you're selecting from the infinite data bank, so to speak, the right thoughts to achieve the goal that you have in mind, which is to put your shoes on before you go out the door. But equally at the other end of the spectrum, to contemplate God, I mean, you have to select the thoughts of such. In other words, you have to exercise thoughts that are already there or available from God. And to do that, you need much greater access than simply putting your shoes on, to put it mildly. And to have that access, you need to be safe. Safe in what you grasp, what you understand, and what you will make of these thoughts, these understandings. And to do that requires, at least for us, life here on planet Earth, where we're chatting away to each other and busy and living. We're exercising a training in which, well, ultimately, the ideal is we come to be safe in the kingdom of heaven, safe in God's mind. I mean, he keeps us safe by very strict, limited access and confinement of what we know and understand and think. To be fully free requires us to be safe in being fully free, and that will require us to have values compatible, not even quite the same values as God, but values compatible with God, safe, in harmony, that add to the wonderfulness of God. Instead of being a cost to him, which I don't want to be unkind, but we are a little cost at the minute. We're not a great cost because he doesn't allow us the infinite freedom of his understanding and thoughts. But he allows us some, and we make of it what we do, and we, well, dare I say, not the word blunder, that's not quite right, but we explore and we taste good and bad and mind the consequences of such and recoil from the bad and gravitate towards the good, of course, because our survival, so to speak, here depends on it, and our survival in heaven, in the fullness of God's mind, would also depend on our qualities and intentions and beliefs and our values, basically. Something of that which need to be compatible enough with God to be safe, for harmony, but still an interest, still a uniqueness. All our friends are some cost to us, but we rejoice in that cost. They're worth it. We ride a few difficult times with them because we've had so much good and we love them, we care. And so it is in the kingdom of heaven. It depends what you mean by perfectness, but there are costs, I think. I'm not certain here, but I think there will be costs, but not massive, horrendous costs. I'm not sure about this. Let me hold a minute. We'll put it this way, part of our godliness here is that we ride the costs of, apparent costs to us, of course, of different people around us. If the costs are too great, well, we put them at a distance, of course, because they're too dangerous. But if they're just minor, like, they're negative at times, and not supportive entirely, well, we get by it. We get by and still carry on interacting and being with them, don't we? So I wonder if it's slightly like that in heaven. It might not be. It may be that, well, perhaps it depends on which heaven. By which I'm now meaning, aren't I? How much of the mind of God one is free to have, one has access to. And that depends on just what our values are. Now, I think it's simpler at the minute to hold to the view that we have to have the same values of God to have the complete freedom of God. But I don't think that the same values of God means in other words, I think we are something more than just values. We are values with a history of experience that's different. We're values coming from a different perspective all the time. That's our individuality. So we relate as individual persons in heaven, not simply as a oneness with God himself, oneness in the sense that there's no distinction at all. And perhaps ultimately we could merge into God and be no longer a distinct entity, but simply merge with God. And perhaps that is a final confirmation. Not sure. It's very hard for us to imagine from where we are at the minute, isn't it? What we're trying to do is we're trying to understand that which can only be understood with the fullness of God's mind, and we're trying to structure and visualize that from not having that position. So, well, I think we're pretty obviously not going to do that. We might have flashes of experience of such, and then return to our, say, normal state as we understand it. And perhaps we all do get that very occasionally. And perhaps it's not so much a thinking situation as something beyond it, a knowing, a bit like when you have a feeling of something, rather than a knowledge of something. It's as if you feel the fullness of God for a moment, or something much nearer to it than we are normally in. And they are the staggering, outstanding moments of life. And again, I would say that the person who's fallen in love and suddenly life is wonderful, just wonderful because of the person they've met and they love. And there are times when they're just translated into an awesome state of being because of being in love. Or if you like, the state of being in love is that awesome translation into a wondrous experience. Wow. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for these thoughts. Thank you, lovely one, dearest friend. Thank you, Heavenly